Addiction and post-traumatic stress have this in common. There is this feeling of despair that is wedded to shame. So there's something fundamentally wrong with me that people would do this to me. There's something fundamentally wrong with me that I have to do this to cope. There's something really defective, and I can't tell anybody about it. Probably the biggest misconception that I see is that folks assume that addiction is the result of a moral failing, either a lack of will or just a complete loss of interest in the social contract. I guess if there were one message that I would want to convey to the person who has no acquaintance with recovery or substance use disorder is that this is an organic brain disease. The most damning or damaging misconception around post-traumatic stress is that it is a disorder. I understand the language around disorder. Obviously, folks like myself who have post-traumatic stress, we do have biological cues and behaviors that the rest of the population does not. But our biology is so finely tuned that it's almost overtuned to threat and trauma. Post-traumatic stress really comes from you doing exactly what you should have done. Your first job is to survive the event. The problem with it is that what you used for survival in that situation doesn't get turned off. So you and I can agree that, yeah, I'm not in the middle of that event anymore, but unless I do something to address my biology and really my spirit, I'm not going to be able to regulate my systems. My father dropped dead of a heart attack when I was 13 years old, just started high school, and it was an absolute catastrophic event. My response to that was to pick up scotch and just start drinking. And what it did for me was it made sense of the trauma. So what I see with the vast majority of my clients, and 85% is probably a conservative estimate, they're folks like me who encountered some life-destroying situation that they couldn't cope with, and they realized that a substance made it tolerable. As I continued to drink and use drugs, I was young and cute, and I was in a very vulnerable position because I often lost consciousness. So I was gang raped at one point. I literally could not recall, if my life depended on it, how many times I was raped. So the longer that I drank and used to try to cope with the trauma of being raped, the more often I became raped. So the thing that got me into recovery from primarily alcohol use disorder, although I did other drugs, but alcohol and marijuana were the staples, was a disastrous marriage. And this was the first time that I had created this mess and no one else was responsible. And I'll never forget this. I had gone to an anonymous community, and I was giving my commencement speech. I was about 90 days in, and I was like, I get it. You get a God. God relieves your obsession. I'm good. This man was sitting by the door. He's probably maybe 5 years older than I am now, and he looked at me and he said, "You're not going to make it." And I said, "Excuse me?" And he said, "Yeah, you're not coming back here. I've seen 1,000 like you. I'll see 1,000 more. You are not going to make it." He said, "But I want to ask you a question." He said, "If your way is working, what are you doing here?" Because that was the first time, that I didn't have some snappy rejoinder at the ready, but it was also the first time that I realized I really don't know how to live life as a functional human being. With the post-traumatic stress, what happened to me is that I found a spiritual teacher who had been through a great deal of trauma, specifically sexual trauma herself. And I love sound. I've always loved to sing, and she chanted mantra. So chanting mantra, EMDR, eye movement desensitization response, and really the company of someone who understood and inspired me and said, "Hey, I love you no matter what, you're going to get better." That was what changed my life. And once that happened, I knew that this was what I needed to do with my life. My name is Reverend Cate. I am an interfaith minister, and I am a master's licensed alcohol and drug counselor. So I work in the substance use disorder field. I work specifically with opiate dependence right now. In an absolute sense, I understand that my happiness and my liberation is wedded to yours. If you don't make it, I don't make it. So what do we got to do to get there together? That's what it looks like.